Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Peru! I love you! Welcome, everyone, to Polycarp's Paradigm. My name is Eric Robinson, and I just recently went on a trip with an organization called Creatio. That's right, Creatio. And I went with them to Peru. Specifically, we went to Lima and spent a few days there. Then we went to a town called Juarez, which I still don't think I'm pronouncing that right. And then from there, we spent the majority of our time in a little town, little village really, called Yupa. And what an amazing experience we had there. And so just wanted to share about the trip and give shout-outs to some of the teammates that were on the trip as well. And so some of the highlights. I promised the team that I would do a podcast about the trip, and so this is that podcast. First of all, how I got involved with Creatio, how I ended up becoming part of this trip was earlier this summer, a friend just told me about Creatio, and I looked them up online, and I was like, oh my goodness, they do all of the things that I just love. Basically what they do is their mission, it's a Catholic nonprofit, but their mission is to lead people of really any religious background or any background into an encounter with the Creator through the beauty of creation. And they do that through service to the poor, adventure trips, pilgrimages. And so basically all the things that I love, there's a spiritual component, it's physically demanding, it's service-oriented, and it has to do with the beauty of God in creation. And so immediately when I saw their website, I just loved it. And I was actually in Colorado this summer and got to visit with one of their staff members and find out more information. And so anyway, I had Creatio in the back of my mind. And what was cool is that in August, so this is kind of a random thing, but each year, I started this a couple years ago, but I really have wanted to make it a point to practice one corporal work of mercy each year. And a corporal work of mercy is bodily. It's a expression in a physical work of mercy. So there's 7 corporal works of mercy. 6 are listed in Matthew 25. It's giving drink to the thirsty. It's giving food to the hungry, clothing the naked, welcoming strangers, visiting those in prison, and visiting those who are sick. Those are the 6 in Matthew 25. And the 7th is burying the dead. And so those are the corporal works of mercy. So I want to get really good at those because the judgment seat of Christ at the end of time, you either did those or you didn't. You either took care of the least of these or you didn't. So anyway, each year I try to work on one. And I was just randomly thinking, I normally don't think about what I'm going to do for the next year until like right before the new year. But I was thinking about it back in August, and I was like, you know what? I really want 2020 to be give drink to the thirsty. And I was just thinking, it was in a car ride, actually. I was just thinking about this. And I was like, but how do I do that on a consistent basis? Or what are the opportunities to do that? And anyway, when I got home after that car ride, I opened my email, and I got an email from Creatio saying, come with us to Peru. The mission is to give drink to the thirsty. I was like, what? No way. What are the odds that I would actually be thinking about that? And then that the Lord would totally provide an opportunity through this awesome organization called Creatio. So I immediately was like, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to go. And that's how it began for me. I then told some friends about it. I told my friends Kelly and my friend Bridget about the trip. And, interestingly enough, several years ago, our little friend group, several of us had wanted to go to Peru, and we just never had the opportunity. We just never did it. And so both of them decided to join on the mission trip as well for their own reasons. And I'm so glad that they did join. And so that was kind of cool too, going into the trip knowing 2 other people. And on the trip, there ended up being 16 of us. So we were in Peru I left December 27th, Friday night, December 27th, 2019. and I got back early Monday morning, January 13th. And so pretty long trip, about 16 days or so. And Kelly and I, since we both live in Houston right now, we both flew together, and we had a little layover in Ecuador, which on the way back, we got to actually spend a little bit of time in Ecuador, which what an amazing country that is. My goodness, I would love to take a trip out there at some point. But anyway, on the way there, we went to Lima, and I actually almost didn't come on the trip because the Christmas week, I started getting sick. I had a pretty terrible cold, and I was like, I was pretty certain it wasn't the flu, but it was a bad cold, and I was like, no, I'm gonna go, but I really hope I don't get people sick. So I brought tons of Dayquil, NyQuil, and some other things to help with that. I'm glad I went, and unfortunately that sickness lasted for like half the trip. It was just a struggle to recover from it. And so overall, this trip was one of the more challenging ones, and partly it was because I was kind of sick for a lot of it. But it was still worth it, and I'm so glad I went. And it was really cool when we first met the team. Unfortunately, Bridget and one of our other team members, Sarah, got delayed in Miami, and Norelli also got delayed in Brazil when they were coming on the trip. So they didn't get to meet everyone that first day on that Saturday, the 28th. But all of us that were there, we immediately hit it off, played some team charades, played some hacky sack, I'm pretty sure. And it was great bonding, and immediately, like, we all just loved each other. And the next day when the other three came, that was awesome too, and really getting to know everyone was phenomenal. And so I'm just going to list the names of the 16 here, and then maybe at the end throw out some encouragements. But we got Mary and Nathan were our Creatio leaders. Shout out to y'all. Father Remy was a priest that came with us, and he's part of an order called the Sodalite Order. I'm probably not saying that correctly. Michael Goki is also a Sodalite brother, and he's training to be a priest. Right now he's a brother. And Cristobal, he's a Peruvian friend of Father Remy's. And then we had Dr. Julia Winfield Tan, a psychiatrist, that came on the trip, and really fun getting to know her. Choice, football player from UPenn, D1, and really great guy. Interestingly enough, Choice, I found out like probably on day like 4 or 5 that he wasn't even Catholic, which is great. Anyone's welcome on these trips, and it was just so crazy to me though, because like he would pray the rosary with us and all that, and it was awesome getting to know you, man. Joe was part of my actual like little cook stove group. Dan, Norelli, Diana, Sarah, Catherine, Bridget, Kelly, and myself. So those were the 16. And so the overall mission, like I mentioned before, was to give drink to the thirsty. And how are we going to do that? We were going to build cook stoves for the locals in this village, because before the cook stoves, they're just using an open flame to heat up their water, to get clean water, and to also cook their food. But the open flame in their little huts produces a lot of carcinogens, as you can imagine. It's really bad for them, bad for breathing. So really having a cook stove where you can have a chimney makes it a lot better. So it's a safer way to get clean drinking water. And that's kind of the connection between giving drink to the thirsty and all of that. But really, the main mission seemed to be quenching spiritual thirst, and we ended up doing some baptisms at the end, which I'll share about, which was really cool. The ironic part about the trip, and another reason why it was challenging, is because frequently, like during the trip, we would run out of water ourselves, and I would get really thirsty. And so ironically, I was the one that needed some drink for my thirsty soul. And so I think maybe the Lord was teaching me, hey, maybe you need to experience some thirst before you go help other people giving drink to the thirsty. And so basically we split up into different teams once we got to Yupa. So like I said, we did a few days in Lima, Peru. We got to visit the Saint Martin de Porres and Saint Rose of Lima, their tombs, and that was really cool. And we got to see Father Remy. His grandfather was one of the presidents of Peru, and we got to meet him, and he was like one of the only presidents that didn't get thrown in jail after his presidency because of corruption. And so he was president, I think it was from 1975 to 1980, and he basically led the people back into a democracy. And we just got to hear from him, and that was a really special night. We got to celebrate Mass in his house. That was cool. And anyway, we finally made it to Juarez. It was like an 6-hour, 8-hour bus ride overnight. Didn't sleep too well that night. But Juarez was awesome. We actually celebrated the New Year and Winfield's birthday. And that was one of the highlights, actually, that birthday dinner / New Year's dinner. We were laughing so hard. Well, half the table was. The other half of the table, they were just involved in this riddle about two dwarves, and one of them could open the door to paradise. The other always lied about which door opened to paradise, and you had to figure out if you could only ask one question to one of the dwarves. Basically, what question would you ask? And so it was an old riddle that Google interviewers used to use for their interviews. Anyway, they were engaged in that conversation. The other half of the table were having a blast, just cracking up about different things, which I will not share on air, but everyone there knows what I mean. And so that was a fun dinner. So, and oh my goodness, the fireworks there were crazy. There's no rules, I don't think, no laws as far as I could perceive, because it felt like a war zone. You had to duck and cover so that fireworks wouldn't hit you. My goodness. And that was kind of crazy. I remember Choice had this like hat on and was going nuts, and it was just great. And anyway, we then left Juarez and went to Yupa. And Yupa was the town that we spent most of our time in, and with the villagers there. And oh my goodness, y'all, such a beautiful place. I think it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. I went to New Zealand earlier this year, and I got to visit the Shire, Hobbiton, that they built for the movie. And this, though, Yupa, was like a real-life Shire. Like, literally, the houses were pretty small, and so I had to duck when I went into the houses. And it was such a cute and quaint village, and, like, the people were so nice, so lovely, so beautiful. And there's farmland, there's mountains, there was streams. It was awesome. I was pretty jealous of the people there. Just their living conditions, their living situation was just so beautiful to me, and their way of life so simple and so good. And anyway, once we got to Yupa, we split up into basically 3 different groups that would rotate different days. So one group one day would be in charge of catechesis, so teaching the faith. And my group, we taught on creation, and then we taught on the sacraments. That was kind of our thing. And then another group would be in charge of house visits. So going into the village, going to different houses and inviting people to either Mass that night or praying the rosary, whatever it might be. And then the third group would go with the guy named Gustavo, who was like this expert builder of the cook stoves, among other things. He's actually very, very talented. And him and his friend did basically all the work in building the cook stoves. We helped a little, like carrying materials, but honestly, I felt like I was just going to get in their way more than help them. But fortunately, the funds that were used to bring us over there were used to build the cook stoves. And so we funded the projects, although my physical labor didn't actually help that much with Gustavo. He definitely had it all under control. But it was awesome being there and building those, and the people were so appreciative, the ones that wanted the cook stoves. Some people didn't want them because they were used to their traditional fireplace. And anyway, those were the 3 different teams. And towards the end, though, it was awesome. Father Remy blessed some water, and it became holy water. And we got to bless their cook stoves, bless their houses with holy water, bless the people with holy water. And they were so hungry for that just to have that blessing, that renewal of their baptism. And one lady that I sprinkled holy water on towards the end, like, just started crying. And that was a really beautiful, profound moment. And then all of that kind of culminated with, Father Remy would offer Mass. We had Mass every day as a group, and there was a couple days we had Mass for the villagers, but we found out that it would be really better to start praying with them and then to kind of lead up to a bigger Mass on the Wednesday of that trip. And so the last day we were in Yupa, we had a big mass where we had 9 baptisms, 1 baby, several teenagers, and some young adults were baptized. And that was just such a beautiful experience. They dressed up, they were really into it, and that was such a sweet and beautiful moment, seeing basically 9 new people in the kingdom of God. That's beautiful. And so that was definitely one of the highlights there. And then each night on the trip, there was different people different groups were in charge of cooking lunch and cooking dinner and cleaning and all of that. And that was another thing that was kind of stretching, because a lot of times we had lentils and rice, or noodles and beans, or sometimes we had chicken, which that was a huge thing. But I think most of us were kind of starving for more meat during the thing. But that's part of the stretching that was kind of cool when you look back on it and be like, okay, we were stretched in very physical ways during the trip. And then usually after dinner we played some sort of game. Psychiatrist. We played Murder in the Dark one night, which is one of my favorite games to play. We didn't play very long though. But anyway, one of the coolest nights that I remember was Father Remy had us, basically we each had to write down 3 of our most favorite Bible verses, 3 verses that really impacted us, and we put them in this bowl. And basically each person was called upon to draw from the bowl and select a verse. Most likely people would select a verse that someone else had found profound, and we just trusted that God would speak to that person with whatever verse that they drew from the bowl. And we called upon the Holy Spirit, and I recorded that night the song that we would sing before every time before someone drew from the bowl, and I think it's beautiful. It's like Veni Spiritu Santo. It was in Spanish, but here's the song, and then I'll tell you about the experience. Spiritu Santo, venga ilumina nuestra inteligencia y a preservarnos del mal. Yeah, so I actually drew first. I did it. And what was crazy is that I actually got one of the verses that I put in there. And this verse has been with me really since I was in about 3rd grade. I shared that in my testimony in episode 3 a little bit. But here was the verse that I got, and I just wanted to share it with you all. For to me to live is Christ. This is Philippians 1:21 through 26. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If it is to be life in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. Yet which I shall choose, I cannot tell. I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary in your account. Convinced of this, I know that I shall remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus because of my coming to you again. So that's the verse I drew, and they also, part of the process was just people would give encouragement, like, hey, I think that the Lord's saying this to you, and then other people would say different encouragements, and then I would be asked to share like what I felt like the Lord was speaking to me, and I really felt like at the time He was highlighting, okay, I am here for other people's progress and joy in the faith. Like that really stuck out to me. And then upon later reflection, really that fruitful labor part stuck out. And one of the reasons is because later on the trip, I shared with Father Remy and some others one night that one of the verses that just constantly is circulating through my mind is John 15:5. Jesus says, apart from me, you can do nothing. And I always am thinking about that verse, like, Lord, apart from you, I can do nothing. Apart from you, I can do nothing. Apart from Christ, I can do nothing. And I just love it. I think it's very healthy for me to reflect on that verse. And Father Remy, actually, one of the verses he didn't draw that verse that night, but it got highlighted to him, this verse, later on the trip. And it's John 15:5 through, I want to just do it through 11. And the connection between these verses is profound, the one that I shared earlier as well. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If a man does not abide in me, he is cast forth as a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you will, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments, and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and your joy may be complete. So those are the two verses, Philippians 1 and John 15, that really, at the end of the trip, those became my theme verses, and the connections were awesome. There's fruitfulness, talked about in Philippians 1. There's fruitfulness talked about here, like, if I abide in Christ, I'll bear much fruit. And what was crazy is I was telling people about my podcast, Polycarp's Paradigm, and Father Remy reminded me what Polycarp means. The name means much fruit. And so that was so cool to get that message from the Lord, that I'm here to bear much fruit. Apart from Christ, I can't do it. Although I desire to be in heaven, although I desire to be with Christ in heaven, I'm here, and for that, I'm here so that other people will progress and in their joy and in their faith. And Christ himself, he came so that I might have joy to the full, that my joy may be complete. And so that was a really cool moment, I think, for everyone. What was cool about that night is it seemed like every verse that came to people, it really spoke to them. And so what a cool exercise that was. And once again, the trip in Yupo was phenomenal. We actually did a reflection the next day on our experience that we had that night about those verses and everything. And I wrote a little poem. I'm going to share it. And this poem I was writing, I was just trying to take in the scenery, and then I was also reflecting on Philippians 1. And so I'm going to do this in an accent because I think it just sounds cooler as a poem if I do it in more of like a British accent. Rushing waters roaring, crops of corn forming, green mountains protruding, sunny and clear skies on this Peruvian morning. The Lord has led me here. I come alive in nature's beauty. Peace of God's presence dispels all fear. As perfect as this scene may be, my heart longs for heaven with thee. I cannot rest satisfied on earth, when I know this is a mere foretaste for the coming rebirth. Why am I still here? Though I desire to be with Christ in heaven, my mission is to spread the faith like leaven. To draw friends and family to the Eucharistic table is the purpose for which God has made me able. That they may progress in the faith with all joy, I remain the flesh with spiritual weapons to deploy. I am here, God is near, purpose driven, beauty given, sustained by peace, joy in being the least. All glory to you, God. With all I have, I give you, Lord. A poem by Eric Robinson. So that was fun to write that. That was another cool part of the trip that I really appreciate Creatio for, is carving out time each day to have what they called a holy hour, what I would call like a quiet time, basically. That for an hour we would just spend time with God out in nature by ourselves, reflecting, praying, maybe reading a spiritual reflection, and that was really profound as well. And once again, one of the missions of Creatio is to really have us encounter God through the beauty of creation. So after our time in Yupa, we actually went to the Huascaran National Park, and Mount Huascaran, I'm probably not saying that right, is a 22,000-foot mountain. It's the highest mountain in Peru. It's, I think, the second highest in all of the Andes. I think the first one they said was in Argentina. And anyway, it was huge. And we climbed up. Yupa was at 10,000 feet of elevation, which was an adjustment. But then we climbed up on this hike to Laguna 69, this lake that was just so beautiful. The water was turquoise as can be. There were waterfalls, there were mountains. It was amazing. And that was about 15,000 feet of elevation. So pretty amazing. And so overall, the trip was just phenomenal. It was challenging physically, spiritually, and it really was great doing it with a team. And so definitely want to give it some shout-outs. And I did write some more poems if anyone wants to know about the Eucharist, because we did some time of adoration. You know what? I'm just going to go and read. I'll read one of these poems. How about that? And this was a day where we did Eucharistic adoration outside. And Father Remy, so bold, let the Blessed Host basically put it between a cross and a rock. And so we were looking at Jesus, looking at us, out in his creation that he created. But I kept thinking, as Jesus was just there and so vulnerable in that place, in that space, about just his coming to us as a baby in a manger and how fragile he was, when he came to us. Like, he could have come any other way. He could have come just directly as a man or like an adult, but instead he came as a fragile baby in a manger. And, it was still the Christmas season when we were doing this. And so I kept thinking about that. And we had just celebrated the Feast of the Epiphany, where the wise men go visit Jesus. And so anyway, I wrote this poem, and once again, I'll do it in a little bit of an accent for all audience here. So here we go. Fragile babe entrusted to human hands, weakness assumed to save mortal man, Christmas mystery made manifest in the blessed host. With the Magi and all nations, we declare Jesus as our only boast. Simple love, powerful fragility, Christ has come in all humility. Show me the path of condescension, so that one day I may participate in your ascension. Love descending, man ascending, a great exchange, so pure, so bright, the most holy Eucharist before me, faith yearning for sight. If only I understood a little more who it is that I adore, trembling in the presence of goodness, my life would find its fullness. Light of glory, shine on me, take me to heaven with thee. An Eric Robinson poem. I'm feeling very poetic this year. I have something in the works with poems, and so I'm really enjoying it. You know what? I'm just going to share one more, and then I'll move on to shout-outs to the team. This is another Eucharistic poem. Once again, we're adoring Christ in this beautiful scene where it's just mountains and we're outside. We had just celebrated Mass outside. So beautiful. And so it made me think about these things. So, through him all things are made, in him all creation is sustained. The God who formed the fields, made the mountains, and supplied the seas, is the God who now appears to me. Bread of life given for all, silent presence among the sounds of nature's call. Birds are chirping, roosters are crowing, mouse are mooing, cows are moving, and the bees are buzzing. All life now bows before the source, bringing adoration to the blessed host. Peru cries out, longing for more. People with good hearts, come and meet your Lord. Do not remain in ignorance of sin, but come forth to the merciful I Am. He is here in your midst. Your humble hearts will give you a glimpse. Love and grace is here to be found. Creation groans for our praise to resound. Yes, what inspired me with that poem is that, we really got a sense of these people's hearts. Like, man, the people in Yupa, their hearts were so pure, so good, so lovely, so humble. And so it just made me cry out like, okay, like now it's time to receive the grace, because grace is attracted to humility. And that was so beautiful about celebrating the sacraments, especially baptism of the people, is like God was just pouring out his grace on these people. And we got to be a part of that, which is really, really sweet. And so, without further ado, I'd just like to do some shout-outs to the team. Mary, our fearless leader, Mary from Creatio, which, by the way, everyone, most of the people on the trip were younger than me, which is fine, and it was cool. It was actually a lot of different types of people. Some were college students, some were not. But Mary, I just think you're a great leader, and it was awesome to see you lead, and with calm, confident leadership. And even if sometimes you may have been freaking out on the inside, you didn't show it at all. And I love how you just went with the flow. And I love how you set us up and you said right away, hey, y'all, don't have expectations. You probably didn't say y'all because you're not from Texas, you're from Virginia. But you said don't have expectations. And that was super helpful because right away it was like, okay, we're going to just go with it. And I was so pleasantly surprised. Like on that hike the last day, I was so glad I didn't have any expectations. I had no idea Peru was that beautiful. I can't wait to go back. I hope I do get to go back. But Mary, I just really loved your leadership, and your calm, collected, leadership style was really, really refreshing. Nathan, it's awesome that we all got to share that this was your first Creatio international mission trip as a Creatio mission guide. And I just think you brought just some fresh, youthful zeal to that role. And I really loved your talks that you gave, especially the one at Laguna 69, and just your inspiration the night before about kind of prepping us like, hey guys, it's going to be hard, but this is what Creatio is about. It's about encountering God through behavior. You didn't sign up for some other trip or something easy. Like, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And so very inspiring, man. And I just am thankful for you and for that inspiration you were able to give. Father Remy, you really spoke life into me, and it was a tough trip in multiple ways for me, but you really encouraged me and edified me and really called me out on bearing fruit, and just I was just refreshing to hear your encouragement and to see you exercise your vocation as a priest, and you were tireless and you just loved the people so well. There was one day, everyone, that we were just walking back for lunch, and we see Father Remy with a gardening tool in his hand, hacking away at the ground with 3 locals. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. The priest is just laboring away in the fields, not just metaphorically, but literally. It's that just kind of exemplifies Father Remy. He challenges himself and challenges others by his example. Michael Goki, you are such a mighty man of God. You can't help but if y'all saw Michael, you would see Jesus. That's how it's just crazy. You just radiate humility. You radiate love for others. One of my favorite memories of you was during the baptisms. We had 9 people that were going to be baptized, and only 4 had shown up on time. And so you went out to gather the troops, and you come running back with I don't know, was he 9-year-old boy in your arms? It was absolutely, you're exhausted, but you carried him the whole way. He could have totally walked, but for some reason you were carrying him. And so that was a beautiful, beautiful thing. It just shows that you're desperate for people to have spiritual life, and that is an amazing thing. Cristobal, I'm probably not saying your name right, but it was so awesome. And that party we had at your parents' house was just crazy and fun and amazing. And it was such a privilege too, when all the group had left pretty much except for me, Bridget, and Kelly. We were still there the next day, and we got to hang out with you. And just your wisdom and your advice to us was phenomenal. And I loved hearing about your reconversion that you just had a few months ago, and you're on fire for love of Christ. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Never lose that flame of faith, my friend. Julia Winfield. I guess I'll go ahead and say this on the air just because I know it'll make you laugh. Oh, hey, girl, hey. So we had fun with that phrase throughout the entire trip. I really enjoyed getting to know you, and you're kind of like me in a lot of ways, very goofy and very fun to be around. I mean, I guess I'm like that. We'll see what the others think. But anyways, great. And also getting your advice as a psychiatrist and all that was really fun. And just seeing your zeal for adventure, your zeal for God was really cool. And I feel like you figured out life. You figured out how to work a job that doesn't constrain you and just allows you to go on adventures. And that is so awesome. Choice, D1 football player, UPenn, what up? Great getting to know you, man. I think you're just so genuine, and I love your journey of faith, and I'm so excited for the day that you become Catholic. I'm just going to go and prophesy that. You're going to do it. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. But anyway, even if you didn't, I still love you, and I think you're a great guy. And just seeing your competitiveness, even with the little kids playing soccer, was hilarious. And you really cared for the people and tried your best with your Spanish, better than I did, I'm sure. Joe, you have a heart of gold, my friend, a heart of gold. And I am so excited about your life. I think that, man, like, God just loves your heart so much. He loves you so much. Like, I just get that sense every time I think about you, just how much God loves you, and I just hope you remember that. Dan, you are a very funny guy, and you know it. You know it. You're just not always just displaying it outlandishly like I am, but you have the funniest comments, and it was just such a joy being with you on the trip. Norelli, everyone. Norelli and Diana were from Brazil. I guess they still are from Brazil, technically. But anyway, Norelli is she's about to go back to the States and get her PhD in materials engineering from Stanford. So a bona fide genius. But what I love most about you, Norelli, is just your sweet spirit, your gentle, kind spirit. And it was just, I had some fun memories of you on the trip. And so just want to encourage you to keep being kind and merciful and just be who you are. Diana, great getting to know you as well on the trip. And I really enjoyed our conversation. We were hiking down this beautiful place, the Huascarán National Park. And, Diana was like, so tell me about indulgences. What do you really think about those? What's that all about? And so we had a 30-minute conversation about indulgences and what the Catholic Church teaches and how I first was uncomfortable with that, and then I became comfortable, and how now I view it as just an awesome source of mercy and grace from God through the Church. And so that was a beautiful conversation. Sarah, man, that night that we were doing that Veni Spiritu Sancto exercise where we sang the song and encouraged each other, and your encouragement to every other member was just so radiant with the Holy Spirit. It was beautiful. It was like, oh my gosh, like this girl is in tune with God's Spirit, and it was really sweet to see that. Catherine, really fun getting to know you. You were the youngest on the trip, and it was just fun. You didn't seem the youngest though. You seemed pretty mature for your age, and yeah, it was just, I felt like we connected well as like a brother-sister type relationship, and really fun being on that same team with you, same trip with you. Bridget, of course, you're one of my good friends. We've been friends now for almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years this May. Bridget, for those of you who don't know, edited my first book, Thoughts of a Changed Mind, for 6 months, and so we go way back. But anyway, it was great seeing you on this trip, and it was so interesting because you doubted, you were struggling with whether or not we were being effective, and I thought that was so ironic because you are actually fluent in Spanish, and so you were able to be more effective in your ministry to these people than all of us non-Spanish speakers were. So that was a beautiful thing to just see how God used you so powerfully in the trip, even when you had your doubts about that. And I know this has been, last year was such a tough year for you, and just seeing you kind of embrace the Peru trip and allow God to work through it was a beautiful thing, even though it definitely had its challenges. Kelly was great, a great friend of mine from Houston. We've been friends also almost for about 5 years. I met her a few months after I met Bridget, and so the three of us have been friends for a while, and it was great seeing you light up with those kids. I mean, y'all don't even understand how cute these little kids were in Peru. Like, some of the cutest little children I've ever seen in my life. And Kelly was just so good with them and playing with them and, like, really just having so much joy with them. And Kelly certainly, like a lot of us, had gotten sick on the trip, but you were able to stay strong and persevere through that. And even though that hike was really hard for everyone, we all did it, and you persevered in that as well. And then Eric, bad boy with 12 tally marks. Did I say that? I'm not going to comment about myself because y'all know me. Check out episode 3 if you want to know more. But anyway, it was a great team, great experience. I highly, highly recommend. Check out Creatio. They got pilgrimages all over the world. They got the Camino. They got some other pilgrimages. They got trips to Peru. They got trips to the Galapagos Islands. They got a Forsati pilgrimage, which is awesome. And so definitely recommend Creatio. They're based out of Denver. You can find them at creatio.org. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed my poems in my British accent. And maybe saw a different side of me on this podcast than you've seen in previous episodes. But thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Lord, for your creation, your beauty. You are beauty itself, and it is expressed so beautifully in the beauty of creation. So have a good day, everyone. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Dr. John Aquaviva here, author, professor of exercise science, and host of Faith in Sport on WCAT Radio. Please join us as we discuss current events in the sports world, bring on inspiring guests, and discuss how our Catholic faith impacts all who are involved in sport, the athletes, the coaches, the referees, and yes, even the fans. So join me, Dr. John Aquaviva, as I discuss my two favorite topics, my faith and the world of sport, on the Faith in Sports show here on WCAT Radio.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.